I'll go ahead and say what an honor it is to talk to you. It's and especially about new music. It's very exciting, as always. So,
thank you very much.
With the record being subtitled "Songs from a Broken World," I'm guessing an artist doesn't need to look far today to find the words for something like this. And I was wondering, how long did it take this full idea to unfold for you?
Well, it's been quite some time because it actually started as a book. I've been trying to write a novel, a science fantasy novel, for quite some time, years. And I even borrowed a couple of ideas from it for the last album, which was 2013. And I'm still nowhere near getting it finished. But I do have this collection of ideas to do with this global warmed future world. And when I started to write Savage, the new album, I was thinking about what to sing about. Because quite often I would take things that were going on in my own life, whatever it might be, and be some kind of personal crisis or whatever. And I didn't have anything. To be truthful, life has been pretty good to me since I moved to America. And so I thought, well, I'll look to the book then. I started to do musical versions of the book. And that was how it started. It was going to be this loose kind of fantasy idea about what the world may be like should global warming happen. But even that was kind of only half of it, really. There's a little bit of religion or anti-religion thrown in. It didn't have a great deal of focus. And then the election came along, and President President-elect Trump at the time started to talk about, global warming not being real and all this kind of thing. And then he got elected, became president, and then eventually pulled us out of the Paris Accord. And all this was going on while I was trying to write this album, which had a global warming kind of theme to it. And it was fantastic in the sense that, first of all, I think it's a terrible mistake to bring us out of the Paris Accord, but it gave the album, or the subject matter of the album, a lot more focus. It gave it a real day realism, a relevance to what's going on now, which it absolutely did not have before Trump talked about taking us out of the Paris Accord. And so it went from being this sort of silly fantasy sort of thing, to something that really started to have some kind of power to it. And it became a lot more enjoyable is the right word, but it seems wrong when you're talking about something which is such a dangerous thing.
Right.
But it gave the writing a real focus, and it really helped. It helped in the other direction as well. Whereas before the book had been slightly aimless, if I'm honest, and, it became a little bit embarrassing to even talk about it because I had been working on it for so long, and still don't really have much of a story behind it, just lots and lots of ideas. It actually fed back into the book, and now the book really has structure, and I can actually see an end point to the book now. So it's been a really good writing experience for me on both sides, both as writing the album and actually getting the book properly underway.
Some artists were, they were trying out that idea before the election, and it was always what if, and everyone was sort of, or not everyone, but the artists that were doing it were sort of imagining what would that look like. And you got a lot of those albums that came out afterwards, but that was the creepy thing because the what if turned into a real thing. And, the stuff that you're talking about on this record, is sort of like that what if, but now it doesn't seem so sci-fi.
No, that's the thing. I don't think that what I've written about is likely at all. I'm not trying to claim it's some kind of a intelligent prophecy. Absolutely not. I wouldn't have the intelligence to even begin to do that. But in terms of it being pure fantasy, which it was before, maybe not anymore. Maybe now, even though it's unlikely, even though it's extremely unlikely, possibly, it isn't impossible. And I think by pulling America out of the Paris Accord, I think it became, a very large step closer than it would have been otherwise. Mm-hmm. And it does make it relevant, and it is something that we should talk about more. And I'm not trying to be political at all. I'm really not. I don't think that way. I'm not good with that sort of thing, and I'm not even sure that. Well, I'm certainly not the right person to be trying to do anything political within music, but I do think it's a relevant subject, and I do think it's valid to be writing about it. And I do think it's a frightening thing. In some respects, I'm writing about it more from the point of view of a worried father than anything else, because I've got 3 little children of my own. who are growing up. And you are. I think when you become a parent, you do worry a little bit more about things that perhaps you just pushed to one side when you were younger.
I mean, you've got one of your daughters, singing on it, and I've seen that she's been in the live shows and everything, and that's what I thought about, is like you're conjuring up a world that you hope that they never have to experience, even in the most, minute version of it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. We shot the video. There's a song on the album called "My Name Is Ruin," and we used that as the first single from the album, which is the current single from the album. We shot a video for that out in the desert. So we went out into the far reaches of the desert. We were there for a couple of days, and it was the beginning of, unfortunately, it was the first day of a 4-day heat wave, and we saw temperatures getting close to 120, and she was there with us. And you sort of look around at this desolate landscape and the heat, and how difficult it was just to be there, let alone, to be there for a few hours, let alone actually live in anything like that. You imagine that, but much worse. And it does make you think. It really does. And you see how it's unbearable, absolutely unbearable.
Yeah, the images that you guys have put out there have been so powerful. And the song itself is just such a powerful song, especially when you look at this big story. And I know you're living in California now, which seems to be at the forefront of the environmental conversation, although it's in a country that there is a huge chunk of it that is not at that forefront, and what an interesting space for you, especially, I guess, not being from the area.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, not by a long way am I from the area. I come from a wet, soggy part of the world, which things are very, very different. And funnily enough, there is one school of thought that thinks that British people should be more sceptical than most because there's not a lot of obvious signs of global warming where we come from. But that's not the case. It's been very interesting to be a foreigner here. To be an Englishman here, when all this has been going on, and to see how different opinions are as you sort of look across America. In some respects, one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to the tour that comes later in the year is that I'm going to be traveling from one side of America to the other, left to right, up and down. And I'm just very, really keen. We do meet and greets every day, and people come out. And we chat to people quite a lot. And I'm going to find that very interesting because I think the album being about the after effects of global warming, I'm sure that's going to be one of the main conversation pieces as I talk to people. So I'm going to get firsthand a variety of opinions, I think. Some of it, no doubt, supportive, and a lot of it probably quite hostile as to what I'm saying, where people do and don't agree. So it's going to be interesting. And I'll have a much better gauge on American opinion on this subject when we come back. But in some respects, one of the reasons I've been making it very clear what the album is about, and pushing it, making sure it's in the biog that goes out and so on, is because I think it's a conversation that we should be having. Mm-hmm. I think the more people that are talking about it, the better it is.
No, I definitely agree with that, and I think that's what personally, one of the most exciting things about getting to do the research for this interview and looking into it and realizing what our conversation was probably going to be, because I'm in complete agreement with you. It's something that's near and dear to my heart, but it doesn't always get the opportunity, for what I do at least, to kind of be the center. So I'm really appreciative that that's what you've made this record about to a point. So.
Well, good. Thank you.
Yeah. And I know there's other parts to it too, because as the bigger story goes, I guess, and I haven't caught this part of the album, but we're in maybe it's the bio, the press sheet, where it says, and then religion surfaces, and in this futuristic world where it had gone away and everybody's just surviving, but then it resurfaces and everything sort of starts all over again. And if I have that right, it's the quote that I keep thinking about is about being doomed to repeat it, history. So.
Yeah. I think what it says is religion kind of reappears and it all goes downhill from there. when you put that into the context that this is a devastated planet where people are struggling to survive on a day-to-day basis, where water is so scarce that it becomes currency, it becomes the only working currency. This is as the album calls it, this is a pretty savage environment trying to be living. And the fact that religion can then appear and make it very much worse is a real sign of the way I see religion and the way it works in the world. I'm not religious. In certain parts of the world, I would be executed for simply not believing, and that bothers me. That bothers me a lot, that these kind of extremes can exist. In the context of the album, East and West cultures have merged. The difficulty in simply surviving at all has taken away any of the my God's better than your God kind of problems, and much of the horrors that we see going on at the moment and have done for thousands of years. That's all gone under this desperate need to just simply survive day to day. But within the book, and it's kind of reflected in the album slightly, they find an ancient text which turns out to be a small part of the Bible. The people that find it believe that it was sent to them directly by God, because that seems to be what happens. And they then decide to live according to these words. They interpret them in the way that people can, and they start to live by them. They then decide that everybody else should live this way as well. And so they start to spread like a disease, and they start to spread across the world. And they're vicious, and they're oppressive, and they kill those that they can't persuade. They kidnap, and it's just awful. They're called the righteous within the album and the book, and they do terrible things. And that's the sub-story that runs all the way through it. You have your main themes of global warming, and then you have the dangers of extremist religious beliefs as a sub-story, if that could be a sub-story, but it is.
Yeah, I tell you, this sounds like a really good book.
If I ever finish it, I hope it will be, yeah.
Does that fall into the font that you've been using? Because I don't want to call that an Arabic font, because I feel like I might be getting that wrong, but there's something you're doing anyway.
Yes, it's deliberate. It's another. It's symbolism in a way of the fact that the two cultures have merged. So what you're looking at is actually English, but when you first look at it, it looks Arabic.
Right.
That was a deliberate thing. It's not an insult. I'm not trying to appropriate culture and all that stuff that seems to cause so much trouble at the moment. It's nothing to do with that at all. It's simply trying to find a visual representation of the idea that the two cultures have merged.
Well, it definitely gets the attention anyway. And the whole thing, like I said, ties together the images you've been putting out there. It's a really unique package, which is something that you're known for. I don't know why I'm saying it of any sort of awe. I mean, that's that's your thing. So,
thank you. I put a lot of thought into it. It's been an ongoing project now for quite some time. The imagery behind it, from the font to the clothes that I'm wearing, the locations of everything, the scenes of the video, the subject matter, obviously, have all been very, very carefully thought about for a great deal of time. And I must say, I think this is the 22nd album that I've made in my life. So I've made a lot. I honestly feel that with this one, I've probably got all the parts working together better than I've ever done before. The way it looks, the way it feels, the way it sounds, the subject matter, it's all blended together exactly how I wanted it to from the beginning. Most of the time, when you work on big projects like this, there are adjustments that you need to make along the way, compromises that you need to make along the way. And this one hasn't had that at all. Now, I think, to be fair, that's probably more luck than judgment, more luck than talent, for sure. But it's just worked out beautifully from the word go, the timing of everything, even the timing of Donald Trump coming along and the things that he said, everything fell into place, and I've ended up with an album that I'm incredibly happy with.
Well, as dark as it is, it's a lot of fun to listen to and kind of experience as well. So all of that is very obvious from this side, that the love that's gone into it, the work, and how it's worked out. So
thank you.
Thank you for the album, and thanks for the conversation today. And you're right, it would have been a pleasant conversation with or without the recording. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for doing it. I appreciate it very much.
All right, Gary, it was an honor, and we'll see you around on one of those shows.
Okay, hope so.
All right, take care. Bye.